fucking funny, man. Hold on, dude. Holy shit. We gotta figure out what to do with that. Holy fuck,
You're
dude.
gonna get somebody in your life someday who does that exact exchange. This guy's funny. This guy's like really funny. Have you no really like have you like auditioned?
No, get over here. Everybody get over here for a
Everybody
second.
check this guy out. This guy's funny.
Just look at the way that he's like a little more, like, he's got a little more fat on him than you would expect for a skinny looking guy.
God. He's just like really pudgy around the middle, but like we could work on it. He's funny. Tell him a joke. Tell him the thing you told me. Come on, bro. Tell him the joke.
I said Doc Marten's more like I need to wear a smock to keep him.
It was funnier when he told me earlier. No, I swear, dude. This guy is hilarious. He's gonna be the next SNL. This guy right here. This guy right here is gonna be the next SNL. He's the next like Stefan or whatever. It's like ridiculous. Anyways, Ruth, come over here. Let's take a picture. Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 4 of the ChatzRoom. My name is Alan, and with due respect, I fetishize this guy. It's Magellan. Magellan, how are you doing?
Oh, feeling great, man. You know, it's just good to feel seen.
Seen like the side sort of genre of emo music, or
This is the story of the girl.
This is the least seen song I've ever. Oh my god, you sang a pop song. Down the I listened to that actually. I listened to that whole song recently.
The whole song? Wow.
Yeah, the real song.
Good job, bud.
Not the album. What the hell?
You sat through a whole song. That's awesome.
I can listen to remixes and clips.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can only listen to girl talk.
It's the only way I consume music because I need multiple songs at once. I got no time. I'm a busy guy.
I'm running around. I'm in the big city, you know, Big Apple, that big smoky apple, and I just don't have the time.
I visited that big smoked apple for you recently, for your purpose.
For my purpose, yes, of course.
No, we got what did we do? We got chicken and waffles. We got hot sauce on my chicken. We went to a nice library. These are all true things.
It was a bookstore. It was not. It was a bookstore, but yeah.
Yes, it was a bookstore. Sorry. No, it was a time. That was really fun.
Hey, you know, you were in the city where this show is set.
Oh God, you're right. I was in the newsroom.
I should have taken you. Next time you come, we'll do a photo shoot in front of the exterior building from the newsroom.
And get kicked out.
Tourists are always stopping there.
Like, oh, that's from the newsroom.
Oh, fuck.
They got the newsroom bus tour. Oh, fuck.
Yeah, they walk by the Empire State Building and they're like, no, this isn't it, man. It's not it.
It's not the real one, man.
Hey, excuse me. Can you point me to the newsroom exterior shot building?
What building is it, actually?
It's just like a random building near Bryant Park. I think it's like the Bank of America headquarters or something. Oh, we went to Bryant Park when you were here in
November,
yeah.
Huh.
Anyway,
I really like the character who's just really into the newsroom and wants to visit the city just to see all of us. I want to see the scene where fucking Maggie cried.
That character voice is a bit that I've been doing at work with the other teachers, where it's just like kind of a really agreeable bro who wants to learn more about a subject. And he always asks the same, like a form of the same question. So like, I don't know, pretend you're a teacher or like an expert on something, okay?
Hello.
And pick the subject.
I'm an expert on...
Wait, don't say it. Don't say it yet.
Okay.
And I'll be my character.
All right, great.
Okay. Hey, how's it going?
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, you seem like a really knowledgeable guy. What's your focus area? What are you all about?
I spent my postdoctorate studying Henry VIII.
Oh, Henry VIII. I actually had a question about Henry VIII. I was hoping I could ask somebody.
Please, I'm the person to ask.
Is the patrilineal line of succession really all it's cracked up to be?
It's just an unanswerable question. He's caused several hardware failures in multiple PhD students across the country. Oh boy. This is the podcast where we talk about the news, and this is an extra spicy one because we're only discussing one episode this week. Normally we discuss two.
So it's got to be good.
We got one and done, man. Put one in the chamber. Chick, it's like chick.
Chick, yeah, totally.
This week we watched season 2, episode 7, Red Team 3. It was written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Anthony Hemingway. It aired August 25th, 2013, and it takes place roughly on August 26th, September 11th, and November 6th of 2012. Magellan, what happened in this episode?
Well, Alan, I'm going to tell you. In this episode, the depositions continue, with Don claiming that things should be simple now that everyone knows it was Jerry who doctored the interview footage. Will ends up being the one to give the final green light on the story in the third Red Team meeting, and tensions rise as the story goes to air. Within 2 hours, Stamtanovich calls Charlie about the mistake, and doubt begins to spread. As the crew waits for the Department of Defense to answer their emails, their worries are interrupted by the beginnings of the Benghazi controversy. Meanwhile, Mac catches Jerry's footage edits and fires him. Eric Sweeney reveals on live television that he suffered a traumatic brain injury that may interfere with his memory, and Mac concludes that even her Valenzuela interview contains no new evidence. The final nail in the coffin comes from Charlie's final meeting with Shep Pressman, his secret source who reveals that the shipping manifest that he gave Charlie is completely fake. The episode ends with a baked...
Sorry.
The episode ends with a baked... Wasn't she drunk?
She said she was high.
Oh, she said she was high. Okay. The episode ends with a baked Leona Lansing telling the news team to not give up and quit their jobs, but instead to earn back the people's trust.
Hell yeah, baby. This episode sounds really spicy on paper. It's all right.
Yeah, I liked it.
I had like a couple major problems with it, but overall I thought it was an okay time. We're just getting there. And this is like the stuff. It's weird to watch everything happen at once, right? Like you're just like, we have been hinting out like what happened, what's the nature of things, and if anything, the theme that we're learning about this from this of the whole season is that it was not one mistake that led to the Genoa incident. It was on the backs of so many people, to where like this whole like law firm trying to figure out like whose fault is this and is this a wrongful termination suit feels ultimately kind of aimless because it was everybody's fault and not one person.
Mm-hmm.
Like there ends up being no villain because it's like, oh, some of these things were out of our control. And they all kind of compounded at once, and oops, here we are with a useless story and just our head in our hands.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that this episode helped me to realize is the problem with the Genoa storyline is not the idea itself of a well-meaning news team getting a bunch of small things wrong and eventually telling a false story by accident. Because that's pretty compelling, to be honest.
Yeah.
If we're thinking about the setup of this show as like we're going to do the news right, I think you have to have a moment where you see the team doing the news wrong in a way that is understandable. And I think this episode worked. Genoa as a storyline would have worked better for me if it was like a 2-3 episode arc in a season.
Totally.
Like, it shouldn't have to have the weight of Africa and the Romney campaign and all of this other nonsense piled into it, because it's not, it doesn't make sense as like the overarching theme. I don't know. So that's been my problem with the season structure, is that it's centered around the storyline that is valuable, but it doesn't make sense for it to be the center of everything. Like it can just be an arc on its own.
I mean, that you're getting to what is my biggest problem with Red Team 3 specifically, which is like, yeah, yes, I agree. We could have condensed the Genoa story into like 2 episodes tops. But also, because of how they have to keep this taking place in real time, they're busy doing Genoa stuff instead of noticing Benghazi happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that is like exponentially more important to American history than your fake news story. Pun intended. Like that, and to be fair, like you obviously can't tell what in the timeline when this was happening that like, oh, the Benghazi thing is going to all blow up in some huge ways, and also like in really like affect the next election. Like they can't know that. But it's definitely way more important, and I kind of just wanted an episode that was about that. But it's literally actually about, hey, we know this is happening, but all it's doing is distracting us from what's really important, which is which is Genoa. And it's like, guys, you really missed
right.
You missed a chance there.
Like you're not giving us a take on Benghazi at all, and it's not. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything for you to say like, oh, well, we looked at this thing that we totally made up, because then there really is there's no reason why that needs to be Benghazi that's happening. That's what it is. There's no reason why it has to be that. Making it that doesn't make a point about Benghazi at all. I guess it's just like they missed a big one, but
well,
I don't know.
What ends up happening is like we're now basically in the day that the Genoa story happened, and once they start to realize stuff is going bad, they get word, and this is like the first 30 minutes of the episode. The rest of it is the like breakdown of what went wrong. But the beginning is them being like, we're waiting on an email from the Attorney General's office. Yeah. And that's a really cool concept for narrative tension that does not need Benghazi like glommed onto the side of it to make things seem more interesting and realistic. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, sometimes you have to spend literally days waiting for an extremely like life-threatening email or like job-threatening email. And that is enough tension, and you don't need to like put in this like, oh, also no, wait, real life is still happening, I swear, guys, look. Because everyone is already stressed out and like sweating for different reasons, and like this episode does not need more tension from real life. It could use that as its own episode to talk about that, or it could talk about the end of like the Genoa story, but it puts both in one episode and it makes it feel really messy.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to just get to the stuff. There isn't much else that's too big. I mean, they talk a lot about like ratings and like Neil having to. There's like little cool newsroom moments, like Neil deferring his work to the intern because they have this idea of something called doing the book, which is when you get like a huge, gigantic stack of papers with like every single filed news story that hasn't been like classified yet under what it is. And somebody at the newsroom just has to like go through them and find out what's worth looking at. And I don't think anything important comes out of that. All it is to be like, oh, like, you know, people are still doing a lot of stuff, and people are too busy to notice that the main story that they just aired is you know, full of holes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's just there's something cool about them being like, you know, everybody Neil has to do it. One person at the desk has to do this job.
Yeah,
eventually.
it feels it's like an actual inside the journalism industry factoid it's fun to see.
Exactly.
Yeah, like learning about what a red team is. I was excited by that.
And how Will is actually technically not red because he knew about the story more than he let on initially.
Right.
I think that stuff is actually really cool, yeah.
Yeah.
And then yeah, no, we see like Will in that scene okaying the story, and this is also where your name at the beginning came from, but Jim to the last minute is like, I'm skeptical, which is really annoying because I'm sick of Jim being like the one smart one.
Like he's right, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know, guys, like maybe I'm... And because Jerry, who in the deposition is referred to as Jerome Dantana, which I think is fantastic. Because that's... I never thought that was the full name for Jerry. He's like, oh, the reason you believe the military is you fetishize them, and you fetishize the president and this whole government, like the system, the way it's set up. You want it to work so badly that you're willing to ignore the corruption underneath. And Jim's like, all right, I'm not trying to have this fight. You can have your story. I'm not going to tell you not to. I'm just saying I have a feeling. and then that character gets to just have his shit, just have his like I was right moment, and it's really frustrating because I like Jerry.
But Jerry's also right.
It's true.
He just is doing immoral things to try to forward what is ultimately, I think, the more morally sound perspective of criticizing the government and criticizing people being content with militarism because they like the face of what's going on. I think that's a really important critique of the Obama years that is going to carry forward in our historical understanding of that stretch of time.
It is very much a reversal of the current understanding, like the current administration, where people are like not willing to give this guy any more chances because he has done stuff that enough people are like, this is heinous. But hey, man, if we're allowed to talk about current politics like a tiny bit.
No. Yes,
okay.
We are.
I was scared for a second. I was at the gym today and I saw it. Every time I go to the gym and I see CNN on the news or whatever, I get really anxious because they just throw up statistics that make me terrified. 75% of polled Republicans are going to re-elect him.
I'm not surprised by that.
Nobody was disappointed?
It's not a matter of whether or not they're disappointed. I think it's more this attitude of like, well, I'm not going to make them sound stupid. Like they're not going to vote for a Democrat, you know?
Sorry, I don't want to start. I said I wouldn't start. Okay, so something I do want to start on, though, is the different ways in which the story kind of collapses under its own weight.
Yeah.
First off, we have Eric Sweeney, which is probably the most challenging to talk about. I was kind of writing around this one to make sure we can discuss it delicately. Basically, they, in the Genoa coverage, have Gunnery Sergeant Eric Sweeney on the show to talk to Will.
Yeah.
And he mentions that during the operation itself, or at some point during at some operation, he suffered a TBI, a traumatic brain injury, which they repeatedly tell you is TBI is short for that, so that they can just use the acronym, which makes everybody panic because if he suffered a TBI and the most common side effect of that injury is loss of memory, then we just lost the whole source.
Right.
And then, you know, they really don't handle it enough because, again, there's way too many things going on in this episode, but there are conversations about, like, is it unfair if, like, he seems to be of a right mind, but, like, and he was medically discharged, like, able to speak on this interview and all this stuff. Should we, like, do a medical test on him on the air to see if this is true? Like, where do we draw the line in believing him? Versus like just throwing his whole opinion out of there and abandoning it, because that ties into the second sort of tentpole of like what went wrong, which is that Valenzuela, when Mac interviewed him privately, only repeated back what Sweeney said. He never like said anything new. He just, you know, Mac would say like, oh, you know, your soldier, I don't know what you call people that work in the military with you, said this about the operation, and then he would go, yeah, he did say like that happened, but wouldn't contribute anything.
Right, because he doesn't want to make him look whatever crazy or wrong or
he's just like, yeah, I'm yes-anding everything he's saying, and like we're gonna just go with that. And it, you know, Mackenzie doesn't even think about it until things start to fall apart, and then she goes, oh, yep, this is all worthless. Uh-oh. Like looking at the footage back and forth and doing the whole like scrubbing thing and being like, yeah, there are no words. She's like pulling out the script and being like, I'm looking at this and he didn't say anything useful. And like that one's unfortunate because like the Eric Sweeney stuff is like something honestly they should have probably looked into, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Before they went with this, but I guess that is partly on Jerry. But that's not foolishness on anyone's part. That's just like neglect.
Right.
I guess. And then the Valenzuela thing is also just like a lack of care. Like what I'm trying to get at is like, why do you think each of these things happened? Because Eric Sweeney went wrong because nobody checked into his mental health state.
I think it just comes down to everyone at this news agency wants to be the news agency that reveals this story.
Right.
Like this is a historic moment and it would make their names forever. and it's like an accomplishment. Like, it shows that their crusade for justice and truth works if they can uncover something like this. So they're looking for it. And when you're looking for something, you're going to find it.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to the News Bag. This is Alan, bringing you the feedback and the commentary and the discussion that you crave when you just need a little bit more in the middle of your Chats episode. I want to start by saying, kind of just generally apologize. I'm just kidding. I don't need to apologize for anything. Just the fact that last week we mentioned that we would have a News Bag and we didn't. Our editing schedule has been a little bit off, as you can tell, as well as our publishing schedule. But I believe we're back on track, and we should be good for Season 3. So far, that's how it seems to be. But we did get a comment this week. I am going to read it. I just wanted to say, in case people were like, why did they cut to a News Bag? And there wasn't one. It's also the fact that John and I edit the halves separately. So, one of us sends a thing in. The other one expects there to be a News Bag. There isn't one. That was on me somewhat, because I edited the second half, and the second half technically, whatever, behind the scenes stuff, no one cares. Let's read this comment. It's from our buddy Dan. This is actually from last week. This is from last month now. So I apologize, Dan, for not getting to this one in a timely manner, but it's regarding Willie Pete and unintended consequences. So it's several episodes ago, but it's very long and very good. So here we go. Alan, I hope that by now you actually did go and look up the word mohel. Mohel after murdering the word in the last News Bag. It's one of those words that we all know and nobody knows how to spell. So I looked it up. I learned something today. Hold on. Actually, I learned what the word means. I didn't find an easy pronunciation of it though. So I think it's mohel. It's a Hebrew word. It refers to the person who does the circumcising. So I learned something thanks to Chats. He was also amused by the edit that didn't happen in the last podcast. It was funny hearing yourself count yourself back in from a cut that didn't happen. Yeah, you are not the first person to pick up on that, Dan. That was, I thought it was really funny because it was technically a just like missed edit, but we also mentioned, I think, in the beginning of that episode how we used to never edit stuff like that. But we also didn't used to do countdowns, so it would have seemed more natural back in the day. But I thought it was really funny, and to be honest with you, I'm kind of glad we kept it in. As for show stuff, I have to say I'm usually a big advocate for serialized TV, but in the case of Newsroom, the concept is being done no favors in this season. And I agree with Magellan. The jumping back and forth does nothing to help the story. I've seen the idea of jumping back and forth in time be used with great effect, but this is not one of those examples. This feels like a slog where I already know that when I get to the end of it, I'm going to be told that the princess is in another castle. The Hallie and Jim stuff is predictable and weird. In classic style, all of the flirting happens through arguing. How exciting. And we see the author's hand at work again via Jim's frustration about being on the Romney bus. Man, this is a little dated. I like it. I got a bit of satisfaction that Jim's rousing speech got him kicked off the bus, instead of leading to some sort of nonsensical overthrow. The OWS stuff involved a bit of punching downward, in that by this time the episode having aired, the whole movement proved itself to be little more than a fad that had fallen out of relevancy. More than anything, this felt like an older guy taking a shot at millennials and how kids these days are too self-absorbed to understand how things work. I fall into that quasi-generation that's between Gen X and millennials, so I understand the fist shaking over the quote entitled snowflakes, but also the reality of being around plenty of millennials who prove how absurd that straw man actually is. Aaron Sorkin's view is based on a silly caricature. Magellan mentioned a couple examples of how the show's lampshading is preposterous, and it does annoy me as well how ridiculous it can be, and I find that it only annoys me more when someone in the show comments on it. That's just in general, don't be meta on your TV show, not when you're trying to have your show take place in the real world also. When the show first showed Maggie's new haircut and then made a comment about it being related to Africa, my eyes were rolling. I feel like I should be thankful it didn't turn out to be a Maggie rape story, which totally feels like a thing the show would have been doing. I take the wins where I can get them. That is a really sad state of affairs. And speaking of Africa, I do have a compliment to offer. The kid who played Daniel did a pretty solid job. He was quite believable, and it's such a shame that he was a disposable set piece who was destined to die to explain Maggie's haircut. Damn, Daniel. This whole Africa plot is just weird. Sorry. Scrolling. They go out of their way to say Africa is much more nuanced than the homogenized stereotype we have of it. And then the plot plays out exactly like that stereotype, point by point. The only thing it lacked was an HIV subplot. What are we supposed to think about this discrepancy between what we're told and what we're shown? Worst of all, we're only supposed to care that this happened to a blonde white girl because she decided she wanted to go to Africa. I'm sure there was a noble point to this, but it comes across as totally tone deaf. Thank you, Dan. Very strong email, very passionate email. I love it so much, my friend. Thank you. Yeah, I just feel like I've exhausted season 2 of the show at this point. Like, I am still... We're obviously going to see the newsroom to the end, but man, and we're close. Like, where this episode that is out right now that you're listening to is, we are real close. Because season 3 is only 6 episodes, which is 3 podcast episodes, and then we're moving right along. So, in a way, I'm excited to just get past it. But season 3 is different and interesting in different ways than this like kind of rut of season 2 that we found ourselves in. So get hyped for that, please, and stay tuned as I take it back to Alan and Magellan of the past as they discuss the second half of Red Team 3. Welcome back to what is maybe the most physical distance crossed in one news bag segment. We are here again to talk about Red Team 3. Magellan, how was the break for you?
Oh, it's great. It's great, man. I'm in California, so, just trying to hang out and hit it up and
catch some waves.
And honestly, I don't even understand this show because things are moving pretty slowly over here.
And it's like the newsroom, more like the bruise room, It's like crack me open a cold one.
Yeah, dude, totally, dude.
All right, well, now that Magellan's been replaced by Surfer Magellan on the podcast, we kind of have a different, fresh dynamic, and it basically involves me re-summarizing things, both for us and for the listener, the listener, as I like to call them. So we're talking about this episode. We mentioned all the different evidence that people bring to the table and all the things that go wrong. In general, I just thought... First of all, the name Shep Pressman, just good. Just super good. Like a very good name. We talked about Neil doing the books. We talked about Eric Sweeney and how that's kind of weird. The Valenzuela stuff. Honestly, I feel like we hit most of the points.
Yeah.
I like the part where Shep goes up to Charlie and he's like, that Hilo Manifest, idiot? And he's like, yeah. And then he's like, check this out. Hold it up to some light. And then it's like, it's like, fuck you, idiot. It says it on the paper.
So
like,
stupid.
very professional thing to do.
That whole.
Yeah.
That was, I really didn't like that. What a Deus Ex Machina that was.
I would argue that that's a lot worse than the stuff with Eric Sweeney. Because it's like Eric Sweeney's thing is like, they do handle it as those people would handle it in the story, which is to say like, oh, this guy has an actual like physical disability now. Like, how do we take that into account?
Right.
Whereas the thing with Shep Pressman is like, my son worked for you, and then he leaked some stuff, and then you fired him, and then he got re-addicted to drugs, and then he killed himself. And isn't that that's your fault? And I hate you for it, and I'm gonna ruin your life for it.
Yeah, it's
Yikes, dude.
It's like every other piece of evidence is a genuine pitfall that a news organization could fall into. Like, you can't be looking too hard for the story that you do some creative editing, right? You can't ask questions such that you're leading someone. You have to make sure that you know that people are sound of mind when they're giving you evidence. You have to acknowledge the fact that maybe somebody's phone going dead is they didn't pay for their wireless plan or whatever. But this is like, oh, you also have to make sure that your secret government sources are not Batman villains, because if they are, it's going to be a big problem.
That's an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere, and it's just there to be like, and then this. Like I said earlier, you don't need all of the evidence to be bad. It's just like, it furthers the point that like this was no one person's fault. Because some of it is incompetence and some of it is just mistakes. And then the final like big incompetence one is Mac basically finds out how Jerry did all of this because through just a dumb plot convenience, this like random intern comes up to Mac in the office and is like, "Hey, so I got this LED clock. You can like click it and then click it again and like the time stops. Isn't it wild?" Mm-hmm. Anyways, bye. I'm no longer useful. And she plays with the clock and she's like, "Wait a minute." And she looks at the footage, the quote unquote raw footage, and notices that they didn't like what they should have done for like professionalism is put an LED clock in the shot with Stamtanovic. That's the way you should have done that. Instead, she notices that the shot clock behind him, because he forced them to keep the basketball game on, which the fact that whole thing existed just for this moment is so dumb. Is the shot clock jumps ahead and then jumps backwards, and she realizes, oh, yep, nailed it. That's an edit right there. Got him.
Do you think that the intent was to say that Stamtanovic did that on purpose? Like he wanted something running in the background so that he couldn't be edited in that way?
I actually don't know. It kind of comes into the question of how smart and like how far ahead was Stamtanovic himself planning things.
Yeah.
I think it's hard because it's definitely the reason the writers put that basketball game convenience in is for this reason. Maybe though it is entirely possible that he said I want a timer in the background because he knows how editing works. It's totally feasible. I didn't even consider it until you brought that up though.
And why did he even entertain this story? That's my problem with Stamtanovic now. Is why did he even go through the hypothetical of like maybe we use sarin?
If we used sarin.
We used sarin. Sarin.
We used sarin. It's because he wanted to get his point. He wanted to like be a whistleblower in a way, and say because he was arguing that like if we were to use chemical weapons, it would go super well because I know chemical weapons and I know how they're actually used, and I don't want to I want to get rid of the fear mongering around the U.S. using chemical weapons. Like he clearly does have a political reason to do it.
Yeah. Okay. I whatever. I guess I just don't know why he agreed to talk to them at all. Like I don't really buy that reasoning, but it's okay. It's a TV show.
Yeah, he's just a weapons expert. He's just another source. Like he is not even involved in the event. Like why did they try to use him? And then all the rest of that conclusion is just Mackenzie sees Jerry in an elevator, and that's probably my favorite moment in this entire episode. Is her looking at him and being like, "Yeah, so notice the shot clock." Like no context, no nothing. She just basically says like, "I noticed the shot clock," and he's like, and just you watch him crack in half, and his whole like he gets angry very briefly, and then he's like, he just accepts it. Like you watch all of the stages of grief go through his head while in this like 10 seconds. And she's like, "Yeah, buddy, you're super fired. Get the fuck out of here." And he's like, "Okay, I guess you got me." Like a fucking Scooby-Doo villain. So it's bad. But basically, the way the episode wraps up is another really good scene, where most of the crew at this point, like pretty much their whole red team, or a lot of the red team, I guess, Charlie, Mack, and Will at least, go to see Leona Lansing and Reese, and the whole thing gets laid out in front of them. Leona is stoned as hell and drunk, probably also because she just came from a screening of Skyfall, which, hey, this took place in 2012.
Right.
She's like kind of half there and yelling at them and being like, "You guys messed up. You're so foolish." And they're like, "We quit. We super quit. We never want to do the news again." And she plays the role of Aaron Sorkin and says like, no, we can't end the show this early. I want another season. is what her dialogue basically feels like. Is like, yeah, realistically, you guys should apologize. How are we gonna do that? And so the way that they do that is they say like, we give up. We lost the respect of the people. If we don't have the respect of the people, what do we have? And then she says, well, you know what you do with the respect of the people? You get it back. And then cut to credits. And it's a really awkward cut to credits. It's like the second her line ends, you're just fade to black. It like felt like they missed a couple shots. Like they literally could have fit a whole other shot.
Because you think the scene's going to keep going.
Right. It feels like you're going to get one more, or at least like just give me I could literally direct this. Give me like a reaction shot from everyone, and then that's it. That's what you needed. You don't even get a reaction. Yeah. It's just like, get it back, done. But I think that's a little intentional. I think it's supposed to be like a hard dramatic cut, but it feels very awkward.
Yeah, it didn't work. And it's also, it's hard for me to buy this coming from Leona. I don't know. It totally is recasting her character and making everything I know about her seem irrelevant.
Right, how can she be a cool villain if she's the one who's going to bring the heroes back into the fray?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
I just want to do, if you have any stray notes, we can do them now. My only big one is Halliday is also there in that final scene, and we just get this nice, actually nice bit of character development where we learn that Halliday and Leona have history with each other, but the way it's handled is very Sorkin-esque, where the way we know they know each other is that they call each other Becca and Lee, and it's yeah, all right, that's that written on a screenplay says these characters have a past. Good job, they have nicknames. Do you have any final spicy notes?
No, not really. I think it's just that ending just made me realize that Sorkin is really bad at taking the writing advice of kill your darlings. Like, he wants to just keep resuscitating his darlings and keep them on life support as long as possible. So that is part of what I don't love about this show.
Right. We could have benefited from actually losing a major character in this whole kerfuffle instead of just losing Jerry, who only existed for this conflict,
built to be destroyed or whatever.
Precisely. So I think that's true, but we're not done with the season yet, so there might be more
true
results, at the end of this.
Yeah. The only other stray note I wrote down that we didn't get to. Well, first of all, there's a part where Jim says something about instead of saying take what a person said with a grain of salt, he said take what he said with a salt lick.
Yuck.
And I've never heard someone use that idiom that way, and it was really gross. And then the other one was when Don was being interviewed by the lawyers, he makes some Shakespeare reference, and all of them start laughing and all have a crush on him for some reason. It was really weird.
All of the lawyers are you, Magellan.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I like your note here. I love Jerry Dentana, everything he represents as a character. Rip, immediately rip.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is the thing. We're not going to we haven't done a news segment in a while. I want to get back to it next season, hopefully. But for now, give the people what they want, Magellan. Let's take this one home. Tell them what we are watching next week.
Next week, we are watching the final 2 episodes of Season 2. Season 2, Episodes 8 and 9. Episode 8 is entitled Election Night Part 1. Newsnight goes forward with its election night coverage in what might be its last broadcast with Will and Mac. Jim considers retracting a story. The team deliberates whether to hold off on a story that might impact a tight Senate race. And then, Season 2, Episode 9, Election Night Part 2. Season 2 finale. As Election Night 2012 winds down, Will and Charlie await a decision from Reese that may impact their future at ACN, and that of the entire senior staff. Sloane learns the identity of the anonymous winning bidder for her book.
What? There's still, new side plots in the finale?
Yeah, I guess so.
Come on, Newsroom. So we're getting there. We're going to do it. That's exciting. And, hey, folks, we're actually almost done with the ChatzRoom, so this is a good time for me to say, now that we're at the end of the episode, thank you for being a good listener and for tuning in every week. We love that. And if you have feedback or comments, or I don't know, you want to be on a show at some point, let us know. ChatzRoom, chatspod@gmail.com, chatspod@gmail.com.
And if you have a good idea for what we should watch next, let us know, because we're trying to figure it out.
Yes, please send us those. We have ideas, but we haven't nailed anything yet. And at ChatSpot on Twitter if you don't want to make an email, even though it's 2018, dog. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Come on now. And again, yeah, if you like us, shoot us a review on iTunes, on Stitcher, whatever you listen to podcasts on. Subscribe, tell your friends. let them know. We put a decent amount of work into this show, and we care about it a lot. And it's a lot of fun for us to do. But at the end of the day, like, we would like people to hear it, so we don't just feel like we're yelling into the void. So, with that in mind, Magellan.
Yes.
Where can people find you on the internet? Sorry, the delay is a nightmare. I love it.
They can find me on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. You can also listen to the backlog of my other podcast, Adulthood. And that's that. Alan, where can people find you?
At Alan Ibrahim on Twitter. That's spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. I'm also on 2 other podcasts. One is Fireside Friends. It's a monthly pop culture discussion podcast where me and my other friends, Ryan and Katie, talk about the media that affects our lives, and we also just kind of have a roundtable thing where we talk about general stuff. It's a good time. It's found at firesidefriends.net. My other podcast is The Garnet Wager. I co-host it with my buddy Six, and we talk every week about the brilliant Korean game show, The Genius. In addition, we play fun games and grow closer as friends as we compete for fake prizes.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm getting good at this plug segment finally. It took me 3 years, but here we are. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the ChatzRoom. Good night.